think one of the best ways to explore our vast forests or huge areas of protected land is through our extensive trail networks. And if you're ever on a trail and you're kind of curious, who builds these? Do we maintain them? Do they just kind of happen? Well, I always kind of question that as I hike now. After college, I wanted to test myself back leaving Iowa. So I decided to jump on a plane and ended up in Flagstaff, Arizona. And I became a crew member with the American Conservation Experience. And to my surprise, my first hiking experience and backpacking was the Grand Canyon. I got to help rebuild the South Kaibab Trail pretty much from the bottom up. And one of my first skills with building trails was honestly filling a bucket with dirt and putting it back on the trail, because erosion is a heck of a problem. But this was a week on the Grand Canyon, and it was beautiful. But it led me to a project that I hold near and dear to my heart. For 4 months, I was a part of this big crew that took this rugged mountainside and built it into this beautiful 3-mile trail for the Granite Mountain Hotshot crew that had lost their lives in a wildfire in 2013 outside of Yarnell, Arizona. We got to use grip hoists and learn mechanical advantage with rock bars and chisels and McLeods to build staircases out of nothing, retaining walls to hold back the mountainside, and make a tread that you can just walk the whole way through. Off the trail, though, there's still so many more things to learn about, like cooking dinners, coordinating with the whole crew on what you want to eat, making breakfast together, even setting up camp, because you don't go home, you're on the trail for the whole week, and you're in the wilderness. And then there's also a fun dynamic of weather. You don't really expect what to happen, but I've built trails in snow, in rain, and that's when you get a little creative outside of that, and you make tent system or tarp systems and just kind of roll with it. I want to learn more past the desert, so it took me to New Hampshire, and I worked with the Appalachian Mountain Club, and that let me really zone in on a different scale I wasn't expecting, and that was using chainsaws in the forest to build all these structures. So again, I got to use grip hoists to move these massive rocks and also build these staircases out of the trees that we had actually cut down and carried, which is a little exhaustive. But it was also nice because, there's a couple things in trails you have to learn. One of the principles is rain is kind of a nightmare. Water movement can really mess up a trail, so it's about slowing it down or getting out of it, which we built trails and also staircases. And depending on who you ask, it's either a blessing or a challenge. But for the Appalachian Trail, actually, to help with that reduction of erosion, we also made switchbacks. So every time we maintain the Appalachian Trail, it gets a little bit longer and a little easier. One of the other things that we also work on, too, is helping you keep your boots dry, because hiking in wet boots is honestly terrible. So all of these pictures are actually trees that we had to scour through the forest for, learn how to cut them down and measure them and install them over streams and rivers. But sometimes you can get creative with outsourcing your materials, like this bog bridge in Massachusetts that we built, because before it was a pretty sketchy bridge made out of wood, and we installed this floating bog bridge. I wanted to keep learning a little bit more, and that's actually what brought me to Washington State. I was a crew lead for the Pacific Northwest Trail Association, and there's actually a national scenic trail in this state called the Pacific Northwest Trail. And I got to learn more skills. And there's a skill here that's kind of a heritage, I think, and it's called a crosscut. It's those pictures you see from the 1800s of these guys cutting down these huge trees. Well, we use these in the wilderness because in the wilderness protected areas, you can't use combustion engines. So you got to carry these 100-year-old crosscuts into the wilderness. And out here, it still rains a lot. So this turnpike on Mount Baker was this huge washout. But again, we cut down the trees and we hauled it all the way onto the trail and installed it. This is another punch-in that we had to build that, again, this one was really hard because it was up a huge steep hill. It took us all afternoon to find the right tree, the right dimensions to cut down and build that punch-in. One of the benefits I learned the best was after a really hard afternoon or morning of work, you get great nap time views, either closing your eyes or waking up to it, and it's exhausting. So at the end of the day, if you want to spend a weekend either learning a new skill or joining the community or leaving your mark on a trail, These are some communities in Washington that you can join, and they can teach you all these skills. Thank you.